Karoline Leavitt stood under the intense lights of the Hannity stage, the deep blue of her suit catching the camera's glare. At 27, the White House press secretary was no stranger to pressure, but tonight felt different. Moments earlier, Robert N. De Niro had unleashed a sharp jab on air. Trump is a disaster and Leavitt is his puppet. The studio crowd roared, split between cheers and boos, the tension rising instantly. Gripping the microphone, Leavitt didn't flinch. This was her chance, not just to respond, but to flip the narrative on one of Hollywood's most vocal Trump critics. De Niro, with 2 Oscars and a decade-spanning career, entered the studio confident, ready to dismantle the Gen Z press secretary. But Leavitt came prepared, with her Catholic faith, her political savvy, and a firm belief in her role. The stage lights dimmed and shifted. On the center floor, Robert De Niro appeared, dressed sharply in black, his presence commanding. Hannity introduced him with a mix of irony and respect. Hollywood legend, never afraid to speak his mind, Robert De Niro. The liberal-leaning corner of the audience erupted into applause. De Niro didn't waste time. "I'm here for one reason," he began, his voice heavy with the familiar growl of past film roles. "Donald Trump is the biggest disaster this country has ever seen. And Karoline Leavitt? She's his puppet, a young mouthpiece who does nothing but repeat whatever Trump hands her." The room split in reaction, MAGA supporters whistling in protest, liberals clapping wildly. The heat in the room intensified. "You think I'm joking?" De Niro leaned in, raising a hand with dramatic flair. "I've played gangsters, but Trump, he's the real gangster. And Karoline, just a clueless kid who's barely lived long enough to understand what she's defending." Phones came up. The moment was viral before it finished. He pressed on, taking aim at a recent signal leak, where Leavitt had mistakenly exposed campaign plans by adding a reporter to a private chat. "Was it incompetence or something worse?" he asked the audience. "If that's who's representing the American people, we're in trouble," Sean Hannity tried to interrupt. "Bob, she's coming out," but De Niro cut him off, sharp and theatrical. "I'd love that. Let her come out and explain why she supports a man I've warned against for years. I've spoken at courthouses, faced cameras, warned America about Trump. And now this kid's his megaphone, please." His performance turned personal. "She tweets that she's not afraid? Let's see her face me. No edits, no teleprompters, just raw truth." Then, his voice dropped low, dripping with drama. "I've fought bigger than her my whole life, from Little Italy to Hollywood, and I've never lost." He pointed toward the wings, challenging her directly as the crowd cheered and booed in equal measure. Leavitt, standing backstage, heard it all. Backstage, Karoline Leavitt stood silently, every word De Niro had fired echoing in her ears. Puppet, clueless, childish. But her stance didn't shake. Dressed sharply, her blonde hair pulled back, eyes fierce, she turned to her assistant. "Where's that old De Niro clip?" she asked. Her assistant handed over an iPad. "Here. Him praising Obama back in 2016. "Total contradiction," Leavitt smirked. "Perfect, send it to production. I want it on screen the moment I walk out." The lights hit. The ad break music faded, and Hannity raised his hand to the crowd. And now, Karoline Leavitt, White House press secretary, here to face Robert De Niro. The crowd erupted again. MAGA supporters applauded thunderously. Liberals jeered. Cameras turned. Phones came up again. Leavitt stepped out, heels clicking with confidence, head high, gaze fixed on De Niro, who waited, arms crossed, grin smug. But Karoline Leavitt hadn't come to play defense. She'd come to take over the room. As Karoline Leavitt stepped forward, the studio quieted. The tension wasn't just thick, it was electric. She gripped the mic and faced De Niro with unwavering focus. "Mr. De Niro," she began, her voice clear and steady. "I heard every insult. Gen Z puppet, the clueless mouthpiece. You think standing on this stage shouting with your Oscar voice can humiliate me and President Trump?" She paused, scanning the room. "You're wrong." The room fell into an uneasy hush. De Niro leaned back slightly, caught off guard by her composure. "You mock Trump as a gangster and me as a lackey. But have you looked in the mirror?" She asked, stepping forward. You made millions playing tough guys, yet you lecture America from luxury resorts and new restaurants. Do you call me out of touch? The MAGA supporters erupted. Applause thundered, several rising from their seats. Even some neutral viewers leaned in. You brought up the signal leak? Fine. I didn't manage that chat. But let me ask you, what? Do you know about accountability? She challenged. You stood outside Trump's courthouse shouting into cameras. But have you ever looked at your own contradictions? She signaled to production. The studio screen lit up with a 2016 clip of De Niro on CNN, praising President Obama. I like how Obama handles things. He's smart. He's got vision. The clip froze. Leavitt turned to face him again. That's you, praising the very administration Trump ran to change, she said sharply. You talk about Trump being a disaster, but in 2016 you backed policies he spent 4 years fixing. So who's the hypocrite here? Another wave of applause rolled through the room. Whistles, shouts of Karoline echoed from the MAGA section. De Niro sat still, his face hardening, fingers tightening on the chair. I may be young, Leavitt continued, but I'm not pretending like you. You built your image on tough talk. I live what I believe. De Niro opened his mouth to respond, but she cut in smoothly. You said I'm Trump's puppet, but I'm here because I believe in restoring America's strength, from the economy to our borders. What do you represent, Mr. De Niro? Hollywood elites who shout from the sidelines. Her words struck deep. You live in mansions. I grew up in New Hampshire, in a middle-class family. I know what real Americans care about. The room broke into loud cheers. Some stood shouting, Karoline, Karoline, as Hannity tried unsuccessfully to calm the crowd. Leavitt stepped closer to the table, eyes locked on her opponent. You mock my Catholic faith, suggesting I pray to excuse Trump. Don't I pray for strength, and I have it. Strength you only act out on screen. Even some of the previously skeptical crowd now nodded in admiration. The momentum had shifted. What started as De Niro's stage had now become hers. I don't need Oscars to prove myself, she added. I've got the support of the American people. De Niro leaned back, visibly shaken. His smirk had vanished, replaced by a clenched jaw and darting eyes. The cameras caught his hands trembling slightly. Then Leavitt delivered the final blow. You want the truth? Trump won because the people chose him. I've been working for him since college. I'm no puppet, I'm a voice. She paused. And you, Mr. De Niro, you're done. The audience roared. Hannity stood, clapping and laughing. Karoline, you just took this stage like a boss. De Niro, red-faced, rose to respond. But the damage was already done. Her words echoed in the studio, and in that moment, it was clear. This was no ordinary political skirmish. This was a shift in the spotlight, a young political voice taking on a Hollywood titan and holding her ground. De Niro stood slowly, pointing across the table at Leavitt, voice cracking as he tried to muster the composure that had slipped from his grip. You think you're clever, huh? He growled, his trademark deep tone now shaking under pressure. I've fought tougher than you my whole life, but it didn't land. The crowd, sensing weakness, began to murmur, some even laughing. A MAGA supporter shouted, She got you, Bobby. De Niro's eyes flared. You want me to shut up? I won't. I came here to speak the truth. Trump's unfit, and so is she. Hannity tried to ease the tension, raising a hand. Bob, she brought receipts, that old CNN clip. What do you say to that? De Niro turned back toward the darkened screen and jabbed his finger in the air. So what? I can change my mind. I'm not reading from a script like her. She parrots every word Trump tells her. Leavitt leaned forward, calm and confident. You want to talk about scripts, Mr. De Niro? She said, her voice level but sharp. Your entire career's been built on reading scripts, from The Godfather to The Irishman. Every line, every scene, every stance. I don't need someone to write my words. I say what I believe. The crowd exploded again, this time louder. Laughter mixed with cheers. Another person shouted, When's your next flop, Bob? De Niro gripped the mic tightly, his face now visibly red. Don't get cocky with me, he shouted. I built everything I have from scratch, came from Little Italy. I didn't have Trump or Fox News backing me. I've got movies. I've got restaurants. What do you have? But the room wasn't with him anymore. His energy no longer read as passionate. It read as rattled. Another burst of MAGA applause drowned him out, someone yelling, "What do you have, Bobby? The Alto Knights lost 40 million, Hannity chuckled, throwing up his hands. Karoline, you've got him fired up. De Niro whirled toward him. She's not firing me up. She's just another arrogant kid, repeating Trump's garbage. I've been standing up to Trump since she was in diapers. Leavitt replied smoothly. And yet you're the one on stage tonight, rattled because a 27-year-old pressed play on your own words. The jab hit. The audience roared again. De Niro's comebacks now sounded more like grasping than striking. She just prays and hides behind Trump's lies, he snapped. But Leavitt didn't flinch. I pray for strength, Mr. De Niro. What do you pray for? Box office returns? Laughter ripped through the crowd. Even the neutral corners of the studio couldn't help but react. De Niro dropped the mic onto the table, his jaw tight, his gaze empty for a beat. The commercial break hit, but it was clear. The battle had turned. When the show resumed, De Niro still sat there, fists clenched on the chair arms, his voice barely a mutter. I'm not done, he said, glaring across at Leavitt. You want to play this game? I'll show the country who you really are, just another opportunist. But the audience wasn't listening to him anymore. Hannity leaned in. Bob, she scored points. You've got to admit that. De Niro looked defeated, and after a long pause muttered, I don't need to turn it around. I'm Robert De Niro, and she's nothing. It was a desperate line, and one that landed flat. What was supposed to be De Niro's moment had become his unraveling. His fiery rhetoric had backfired. The viral clip wasn't of him delivering a knockout. It was of him being stunned silent. And Karoline Leavitt? She wasn't just defending Trump anymore. She was defining herself, in real time, on live TV. As the studio lights dimmed and the final segment wrapped, the crowd still buzzed with energy. Applause, laughter, cheers echoing through the space like aftershocks. Karoline Leavitt sat calmly, legs crossed, gaze steady, a faint smile dancing on her lips. Opposite her, Robert De Niro sat rigid, his fists resting on his thighs, his face flushed and jaw clenched. The narrative was no longer his to control. Hannity stood between them, still grinning. Folks, what did you just witness? Karoline Leavitt made this stage hers tonight. The crowd exploded again, chants of Karoline, Karoline, echoing, as De Niro sat in silence. But the battle didn't end when the cameras cut. Within minutes, Fox News producers clipped the exchange and posted it on X. The highlight? Leavitt playing the 2016 video of De Niro praising Obama, followed by her now iconic, You're done, Mr. De Niro. In under a minute, the hashtag Leavitt freezes De Niro trended at rocket speed. Conservative influencers flooded the platform. One viral tweet paired a snapshot of Leavitt mid-speech with the caption, Gen Z 1, Hollywood 0. Another read, She made De Niro tremble. MAGA's comeback queen is here. Memes flooded timelines. One of the most shared was a side-by-side shot. De Niro red-faced with the caption, When you thought you were a gangster. But Gen Z schooled you. Another cut a silent clip from The Irishman next to Leavitt's mic drop moment, racking up hundreds of thousands of views in an hour. A prominent Trump supporter tweeted, Karoline Leavitt just showed that Fox News is not Hollywood's playground. Retire, Bob. The nickname Killer Karoline began trending among conservative circles. Her fierce presence, combined with sharp comebacks and confident delivery, elevated her from spokesperson to symbol. Gen Z's rising voice in conservative politics. De Niro's defenders tried to fight back. Some argued online. De Niro's a legend, she used cheap tricks. But even among his loyal base, cracks appeared. One longtime fan posted, I love Bob, but he got smoked. She was too sharp, too fast. He couldn't keep up. Others were less kind. A meme of De Niro looking stunned with the caption, You talking to me? Yeah, and you lost. Gained traction fast. Another with him looking confused read, Goodfellas, to good grief in 30 seconds. Fox News anchors doubled down. One tweet from a senior commentator read, Karoline didn't just defend Trump, she dismantled a Hollywood heavyweight with facts, faith, and fire. Breitbart declared, "At 27, she did what seasoned politicians feared. She owned the stage and crushed the narrative." Even CNN acknowledged the fallout. A segment the next morning admitted, De Niro underestimated her, and now she's a viral force to reckon with. For De Niro, the reality of the moment hit fast. After the show, he left the studio with his team, phone in hand. In the back seat of a black SUV, he posted to X, "Karoline Leavitt is arrogant, but Trump's still the danger. I didn't lose tonight." But the replies came fast and brutal. "You lost, Bob. Go retire." Oscar or not, Gen Z owned you. Trump 2024 with Karoline on comms. De Niro stared at his phone, face pale. He tossed it on the seat beside him. His hands trembled. The internet had made its judgment, and it was swift. What he thought would be a dramatic takedown had turned into his own undoing. And Karoline Leavitt, she was just getting started. By sunrise, Karoline Leavitt's name was dominating the news cycle. It wasn't just conservative media rallying behind her. Mainstream outlets were forced to cover the viral storm. Every major political podcast, cable network, and digital column had one headline in common: Leavitt versus De Niro and the unexpected winner. At Bondi Legal Group's New Hampshire office, the phones rang nonstop. Campaign volunteers, donors, and supporters flooded Karoline's inbox with praise. Her team had never seen this kind of traction, not even during her early campaign days. Maria, her media strategist, walked into the briefing room with a tablet in hand. "You're trending in 9 countries, she said, not looking up. "Fox wants you back on tonight. Daily Wire's offering a guest podcast slot. You're also being requested by The Hill for a long-form feature." Karoline, sipping coffee and scrolling through responses, stayed grounded. "Let's not overplay it. This isn't about a media tour. This is about momentum. Let's stay focused." But she knew what was happening. The confrontation had tapped into something deeper, a frustration with celebrity politics, a desire for unapologetic representation, and the emergence of a new kind of spokesperson, young, bold, and unapologetically conservative. Sean Hannity called directly. "Karoline, you flipped the room. That wasn't a comeback. That was a defining moment. You've got people asking if you're running for office." Again, she chuckled. "Let me finish my term first, Sean." But privately, her team began revisiting old notes, campaign plans she had set aside to serve as press secretary. This moment, though unplanned, had reignited conversations about her political future. Jackson, her lead advisor, put it plainly. "This isn't just viral hype. You connected with people. You broke through without filters, without a script. That matters." Across conservative America, the moment took on a life of its own. Churches referenced the exchange in Sunday services, praising her strength under fire. College Republican groups organized viewings of the debate clip. One student organization announced it was printing T-shirts with the phrase, "I say what I believe, Karoline Leavitt." The sentiment resonated. For Gen Z conservatives, often dismissed or overshadowed by older voices, Karoline had become proof that their views weren't just valid. They could dominate national dialogue. Even outside conservative circles, people took notice. A left-leaning columnist wrote, "I disagree with her politics, but Leavitt handled herself with the poise of a veteran. De Niro wasn't ready." Meanwhile, De Niro remained quiet. He issued no follow-up interviews, no social media commentary beyond that one defensive post. His PR team offered a vague statement. Mr. De Niro stands by his views but chooses not to engage in internet theatrics. But the damage was done. Polls showed a 12-point favorability jump for Leavitt among independents within 48 hours. Donations to GOP youth initiatives spiked. Her social media following doubled overnight. One Fox analyst summed it up. Karoline didn't just survive De Niro. She exposed the disconnect between Hollywood outrage and political reality, and voters noticed. By the end of the week, Karoline sat in a quiet corner of her office reviewing a draft speech. The topic, the future of American conservatism. She would be delivering it at a campus event in Texas, the first since her now legendary Showdown. Lauren, her assistant, stepped in with a grin. "You're booked solid for the next month." Karoline smiled faintly. "Good, let's give them something worth listening to." She glanced at the framed photo of her first campaign rally. Back then, she'd wondered if anyone would take a young conservative woman seriously. Now millions had watched her hold her ground on live television, and for many, that was the moment she stopped being a spokesperson and became a leader. A week after the showdown, Karoline Leavitt stood before a packed auditorium at Texas A&M. The event, hosted by the university's Young Conservatives chapter, had doubled in size overnight, students filling the aisles, the balcony, and even spilling out into overflow rooms. Everyone wanted to see the woman who had taken on Robert De Niro and walked away not only unshaken, but triumphant. As she approached the podium, the energy in the room swelled. Chants of "Karoline, Karoline" erupted once again, and this time, they weren't just fans, they were believers. Young voters, disillusioned by traditional politics and fatigued by celebrity activism, had found a voice that sounded like theirs. Clear, grounded, and unafraid. She adjusted the mic. "I didn't plan to go viral," she began, smiling. "I just planned to stand my ground." The room cheered. What happened on that stage wasn't about me or De Niro. It was about truth versus performance. It was about what happens when working-class values are mocked by Hollywood privilege. And it was about refusing to be intimidated. No matter how many cameras, critics, or Oscar winners are staring you down. Her words struck a chord. She wasn't reading from a prompter. She spoke from memory, from experience. "I didn't grow up on a film set. I grew up in a home where we worked for everything. I wasn't handed influence, I earned it. And when I walked into that studio, I knew one thing. I wasn't going to flinch. Because if I did, it wouldn't just be me backing down. It would be every young conservative told to stay quiet." More applause. Backstage, reporters took notes furiously. This wasn't a standard speech. It was a rallying cry. One network anchor watching live whispered to her producer, "She's not just a press secretary anymore. She's the future of the GOP." Meanwhile, clips from the event hit social media instantly. One quote in particular went viral. "We don't need Hollywood to tell us what matters. We have our faith, our families, and our flag." Across the country, talk of a possible congressional run returned. Strategists began floating her name in 2026 forecasts. Some even speculated she could be considered for VP if Trump gained momentum in a 2024 run. But Karoline wasn't chasing titles. Not yet. Back at her New Hampshire office days later, she debriefed with her team. "We're not shifting course," she said. "We keep doing the work, represent the truth, hold the line." The moment was big, but it only matters if we build something from it. Jackson nodded. "We've built the spark, now we build the movement." As she stepped out of the meeting, a young intern caught her in the hallway, nervous but excited. "Miss Leavitt, I just wanted to say, I used to think politics wasn't for people like me. Now I think maybe it is." Karoline smiled. "It is, that's the point." She walked on, the words echoing in her mind. This wasn't about clapping back on cable news. It wasn't about proving a point to Robert De Niro. It was about what came after, the movement, the next generation. The voices who'd been told they were too young, too quiet, too conservative to matter. They weren't anymore. And Karoline Leavitt had made that clear. On live television, under pressure, without a script. Now the only script ahead of her was the one she'd write herself. Thanks for watching. Watching Karoline Leavitt take down Niro in this peak drama. Hit subscribe now so you don't miss the next fiery media battles. See you in the upcoming video where we'll dive into who Killer Karoline's next opponent might.